Well, welcome to part two of our stained glass series in the church. Just to recap for our last meeting, we discussed, what stained glass was basically, and the history of stained glass, and we looked at it from a time level perspective, and we also looked at it from the perspective of the people who created it and the people who knew about the people who created it, to give you kind of an overview of the essence and how glass is created, literally from ashes, one of the portions of it, and the colors and the different types of stained glass. And I'm sure all of you remember everything I said and are now willing to go on to the next level. How I approach this today, because PowerPoint slides are boring, but it's the only way that I can get this message out to you. So I wanted to kind of give a little story and connect a story, a timeline. And I thought that I would start with periods and just highlight. I thought that would be the easiest way to do it because I have my favorites, and I could spend, let me tell you, I could spend months on Connick. I could spend years on Chagall and eons on Matisse, and we just don't have enough lifespan for that. So I had to kind of narrow the perspective down. So what we're doing is I'm taking a time frame, but also if you are going to, and most of you that have been with me, if I'm really stressing the elements and the principles of art, because even in the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, Romanesque, Renaissance, whether Michelangelo, I'm sure, never said, okay, now I'm going to put this element of art in this particular painting, but he did. Leonardo da Vinci did the same thing, as did Tiffany, as did Chagall, as did Judy, that we're going to talk about today, Chicago, that all used it. So if you begin to think along principles and design of art, trust me, you're going to appreciate it more. Okay. So we're going to work on that a little bit today at the end of the program. So without saying any further ado, let's get started. Okay. Matisse, how I love you. We're going to talk about this particular setting in just a minute, but I love this quote from Matisse, and I thought that we would start off with it. Art should be something like a good armchair in which to rest from physical fatigue. Every Sunday, those of us that are members of this wonderful cathedral go into this beautiful, beautiful sanctuary, and we are surrounded by art. The cathedral builders knew something about art and how, and I would imagine that those of them that were creating that glorious design for those windows and the artwork that is in our church, I am certain that they would agree with this statement by Matisse. Because don't we want to do that on Sunday? Don't we want to just close that door, and surround ourselves with music and beautiful art? Just makes the experience, the religious experience, that much better. So to my friend Matisse, we had to my friend Chagall. And Chagall said this about stained glass. Notice the segue? This is so clever. Okay. The segue, and it just happens to be my people I just love. For me, listen to what, look at this. These are the Jerusalem windows that Chagall did. And when he finished them and they were dedicated in 1962, which was the year I graduated from high school. Oh my God. Anyway, he said this in the dedication service. For me, a stained glass window is a transparent partition between my heart and the heart of the world. Stained glass has to be serious and passionate. It is something elevating and exhilarating. It has to live through the perception of light. To read the Bible is to perceive a certain light, and the window has to make this obvious through its simplicity and grace. So, as we take this journey together today and we look at these beautiful stained glass windows through the ages, think about that. It has to live through the perception of light. That's what in the dark ages, when they built the cathedrals, those windows open those darkness, those inner sanctums to light. And not only does that have to be that, it has to, if you're going to read it, the Bible, the window has to make this obvious through its simplicity and grace. My journey. This is the Union Church, and I want you to look at this little old stone church, and it is in the United States of America. It is a non-denomination church, a congregation. It began as a Sunday school society and a community hall, and I hope that you New Yorkers, if you're New Yorkers on this, just don't hit me, okay, when I say this, because I just can't say it. I think it's Pontacito, no, Pocantico Hills in New York, and it is near John D. Rockefeller's estate. And John D. Rockefeller has a lot to do with this little church. One summer in Saratoga Springs, New York, I was babysitting two rambunctious children, and I decided day trips would be a great job. And so I corralled them and I said, we had read the story about Sleepy Hollow. Okay. And I said, oh my gosh, we'll just take a day trip and we'll go to Sleepy Hollow. And we read the story and the headless horseman, and we'll tour the countryside. I'm going to make a point here. Just hang in there with me, okay? So we did. And as we toured the little church where, in the surrounding area, one of the docents said to me, because I was noticing as we were at the church with the graveyard and everything, and I had said something about the windows and everything, she says, oh, well, let me tell you, do you have some time? And I said, we sure do. Yeah, we got lots of time. Where can we go? With these two kids. And she says, well, just up around the path is a church with that the Rockefellers are affiliated with, a non-denominational church. And it has beautiful stained glass windows. And it's a lovely, just lovely church. So hopped in the car, drove up there. And my view of art, my understanding, teachers are always talking about that aha moment, or in religion, maybe pastors are too, when they look out in the congregation. Oh, someone's not sleeping and they get it. This was my aha moment when I walked into this church. And it's just, as you can see, it's just a simple church, stone, built out of stone, it really fits in with the community. And as I knew that the Rockefellers were Baptist, Baptist by birth, I don't know by birth, by choice. I was really interested because I saw stained glass windows and, certain things I don't know, that's interesting to me. And then I walked in. And here it is on the inside. And it's just, I wish it was a little brighter. And I stood in that sanctuary, put my hands over the mouths of the kids and told them to hush, just give me a moment. And we just happened, there were just a few visitors in there. This is the most beautiful places I've ever been in my life. And in all of the windows are stained glass, and they are done by Chagall and Matisse, and they were designed for this environment. Matisse John D. Rockefeller asked Henry Matisse to design a window in honor of his late wife, and then his children commissioned a memorial window for him by Marc Chagall, and then Chagall just did the rest of the windows in this beautiful sanctuary. And here's the Chagall window. Now, let me tell you, you're standing there, and we were at the perfect time for it. And a couple of things happened to me. One is I understood something that a humanities professor had said to me years ago, 1965, 66, in Texas Women's University. Said, art, you can go to museums and you can look at art, and you can interact with art, and you can share, you can share things, and you can appreciate art. But when you're in a space, that the art was created for and designed for, and you're in that space, the art takes on a different meaning. Pow, that hit me when I looked at that window and that light was coming in. I knew that Chagall had designed that piece to go there and to reflect. And it was just mind-blowing. The other thing was, all my life I've learned about and talked about colors and shape. The humanities people, we do that with art. And in this particular church, this is the Matisse rose window that was designed for that building. And Matisse, we'll talk about this a little later on, but Matisse in the latter part of his life was confined to his wheelchair. And he did collages. He did beautiful collages. And he only did certain colors. And I knew this, but this was so bold and so, wonderful. So having said that, I just wanted to share that with y'all. It was a religious experience. It was a moment when I realized the importance of what art, when you walk in and it hits you in the heart, in the place where it is to be. And for some people, perhaps it's not spiritual, but it's empowering. And that church on that hill on that summer afternoon, when I walked in and took a look at the beauty and the simplicity and how the light was filtering in everywhere, it was absolutely one of the most remarkable experiences of my life. Thus, when we started talking, Catherine and I, when we first started Art at Noon, this has always been at the background of my mind. To in some way engage people and other human beings in that kind of whammy, that kind of aha, because it is emotional, it is spiritual, and my friends, it is very real. So let's journey on, okay, shall we? This is a Romanesque church, okay? And we're going to start, believe it or not, we're going to go back, and we're doing a little time travel now. And this is in Germany. And it was built probably between 10 and 1061. And as you know, during World War II, a lot of these in Germany, particularly a lot of these in England, a lot of these beautiful buildings that were in this period were destroyed by what? By by guns, bullets, bombs. And this one particularly has withstood the ages, and it's just a gorgeous building. The windows in this church, if you'll take a look, are they're rounded, okay? Notice how the structure is rounded, and notice that the windows are not very large, okay? Because the reason I'm taking you through this is because we're going to kind of look at a little bit of the architecture, especially in the Gothic and the Renaissance area, these three time periods, because I want you to the placement. Remember now, we're coming into the light. Think about that. Um, these particular windows in this church, and it's a very famous church. The reason I'm sharing this one with you is the Romanesque period is because it's got probably the oldest windows that are Gothic in the world. Um, these particular windows are there's a David and Daniel and Hosea and Jonah, and they were huge. But and you saw the I think you saw the outside of the church. Okay. Well, and you could see how they would fit into those windows. These windows were huge. Um, their frames in which they are fitted are perhaps are later or smaller. That several of the figures, they seem to be hemmed in each other, or kind of truncated. Um, apart from these windows and their age, the figures, which are Romanesque style, are monumental in size, and they're just really impressive themselves. They're stern Old Testament characters, more than 8 feet tall, who gaze piercingly. Look at them. They're looking at you, boy. Um, the impact of their expressions is all greater because their faces are so large. Now we're talking Romanesque here. Now I'm leading you through the timeline of the masters of glass. Okay, so each prophet holds in his hand holds a scroll with a Latin inscription. Their feet are splayed, and they wear really highly stylized pointed footwear like of the medieval knights. The colors in these windows, right? This is an element of art. The colors in the windows are very different than the colors of the 12th century glass in England and France. This is in Germany now. Uh, these figures are predominantly browns and golds and yellows and green and wine, where in England you would see in the Gothic, I mean the Romanesque period, there the hues are generally blues and rubies. Um, these were the colors that were predominantly in many of the German churches, both in the Romanesque period and beyond. These figures are boldly designed, and despite this early date, are certainly not primitive at all. They're work of a skilled and experienced and inspired stained glass artists. It's hard to see this. Okay. Okay, so we get to our first master of glass. Did a little digging on this one. Let me see if I can pull this over. I don't know when y'all can see this. All right. And the first master of glass we're going to talk about is a fella named Gerlache. I don't know if that's German. Those of you that are German, please, as I said, this is an East Texan with a tongue list. Um, he, you saw those tall figures, all right? He was a monk, and he was this pane of window that you see to the right is a self-portrait of him. Believe it or not, this is him down here, and then I've kind of blown it up over here for you to look at it. It's one of the most important examples of medieval painting in Germany. Master Gerlachus with a brush and a paint pot in his hands. He's bearded. He's presumably a layman in the service of the monastery. He created this whole multi-part pictorial program that extends across all these 5 windows. Here in the lowest pane, he has claimed one field for a picture of himself, which I love. I just love this. And it's rounded arch. It's fitted in such a way that it repeats itself on a small scale. And the framing and the yellow inscription provides kind of a declaration. Um, he was his idea. This was his, and this is one of the first in Romanesque painting. And I want you to notice color. Look at the colors in this. All right. Look at not only the color, look at the shapes. The shapes of the faces, the elongated faces. So now we move ahead to Gothic. Okay. This is Saint Denis. And if you'll look at Saint Denis, this is in France. All right. And now look at the windows. Look at the windows now. We're moving up. This is the 1100s, and the Gothic period lasted probably until, I would say, 1500s when the Renaissance period came in. Stained glass now, windows really are a religious art form, and they're the Bible stories are told and created in the panes themselves. It, Gothic architecture is well known for pointed arches, flying buttresses, and it's employed often in the churches, the cathedrals, and other really massive stone buildings. And here's kind of an inside look of St. Denis. Notice the light. I found one. I found one so you could see just a little bit. It's not, I wish, the internet, but look how the light is filtering through this beautiful, and notice the arches, the silver stain that was applied to the outward, and you can't see it really well. And when the silver stain was applied to outward facing panes, they would turn a yellowish color when they fired. The technique of staining was used to make the light shine through the painting. And often the yellow halos, and you can get a filter of that right here, what I'm talking about, if you look right here. The filter of those yellow halos, and it kind of transcends all the way down here. Applied to deities in these windows were simply the silver stain with no color added. When a strong ray of light passes through these stained glass windows, the colors, if you're sitting there, seems to float outward, making it a revered artwork. And here's our next master of glass. This was the abbot of Saint Denis. And he was the Abbot Suger of St. Denis. He was, and this royal abbot is located just outside of Paris. He was a student and a friend to King Louis VI. He was, he and his writings show that he was a really shrewd businessman, a politician with a genius to detail, and he was a devoted servant to his king. He used his church position to promote the abbey in the public, and thereby he enhanced the power of the monarchy by doing that. He was favored of the king. He was consulted for many other things by the French state. He oversaw royal administration. When Louis the Seventh was absent on the Crusades, he was appointed by the king to serve as a regent of France. And he embarks on this big, if you go see this in France, if you go, because he really is the master designer of, hopefully some of you have read The Cathedral, which was years and years ago, was just a phenomenal book. And this was, at this time, the construction, he really was a mastermind in putting stained glass windows in and opening up these cathedrals. He was not a glassmaker, but he employed them, and he was there with the design of it, and it was his wish. And this is an example of some of the things that look at this, and now look at the difference kind of in your mind. The difference in this is the French. Note, we still have elongated faces. Okay, we're moving ahead, elongated faces. The colors, these are kind of they're using the blues and the greens. But it's not like the German guys we just saw. And this is at St. Denis. Now let's move into the Renaissance period. The cathedrals are changing. Okay, notice, no, not so many flying buttresses here, are there? And the Renaissance stained glass is similar. It's similar to the Gothic predecessor, but it has really unique characteristics and elements that give it a very distinct beauty of their own. Notice in this one, you've got the pointed arches, but you've got towers, you've got roundness, you got these little teeny tiny windows, and looky here, what have you got? You've got these big oval windows that are going to share. It's like a large majority of the early stained glass windows. During this time, this period, of course, the images in the churches were infused with religious meanings. Renaissance imagery, however, were depicted with period clothing often to reflect the importance, because the humanistic movement is flowing. And characters in all of these paintings were painted to show more emotion. And here is a real key thing. They were also painted to, we're getting into abstraction now, not so flat. They were painted, some of them, to convey abstract ideas. We're not so much telling stories to the poor peasants that can't understand and read the Bible. We are now with an age of enlightenment, or beginning in an age of enlightenment. And we are sharing thoughts and ideas and putting that through. And that's where your big art's coming in. Glass became more affordable, and its stunning ability to harness light was more popular. The windows began to appearing more commonly in secular buildings as well. The art movement, of course, during the Renaissance era was characterized by an emphasis really on realism. Caravaggio, Michelangelo, the big guys. Because Renaissance artists wanted their figures to appear with more emotions, their appearance was more, you had the long face, the splayed feet. Okay. Now we're getting into where we want these people to appear to be a little bit more realistic with art, and it conveys in. So here, ergo, Hans Holbein the elder, and there is a Hans Holbein the younger, who was also an artist as well. But this was a very famous for his time artist, and he was not only did he work in stained glass, but primarily he worked in paintings, graphic designers, and he is in the late kind of Gothic style and going into the Renaissance. His principal works, he designed church windows, he did woodcuts. Surviving prints that can be attributed to him are a few, and there's been some recent ones that have been found. But the next one that I'm going to show you, I want you to look at it, and I want you to put in your mind the Romanesque, Gothic, and now we're moving into the Renaissance. Notice this beautiful window that he designed. We're going to take just a look at it ourselves. Look at this. Okay, and just what I said, this is class, guys. It's phenomenal. But notice the images, how they put it in, okay? It's that more realistic. It's, of course, we've got lines, shapes, and colors that they're using. This is probably red because of the royalty aspect. We have perhaps people in it that were real people represented. Moving next, then we have something that happens. So let's go back in your history class, this History 101, and let's talk about the Reformation. The Reformation in the 16 was really, it lasted a lot of historians say it lasted a long time, because Cromwell and ousted all of the icons, and the beginning of the 16th century, the spirit which had inspired English stained glass artists for the past 300 years seems to have withered, and the decline was, and I'm talking about the decline of stained glass artists, okay? And it was pushed by a couple of things. The decline was the employment of foreign artists, basically, and mostly Germans or Flemings, to carry out large scale. And later, the Reformation, which officially brought the making of stained glass windows to an end. During the Reformation, stained glass windows with religious content was destroyed, especially in England and Ireland and Scotland. Um, they were replaced with clear glass or windows, either stained or enamel, painted with non-religious subject matters. And at this time, something started to grow um, in that era, heraldry. And heraldry with the Reformation, with its change in religious opinion, preventing the making of prevented, hear me, no more religious windows. Couldn't do it. So glass painters concentrated upon the production of heraldic or secular windows, as this one's. These often consist of roundels set against plain glass backgrounds. The subjects depicted were sometimes religiously and used for private devotion. Other times they consisted of inspired scenes or scrolls. This gives you kind of a really good example. And especially if you travel in England, a lot and go into castles, you're going to see this type of thing because they really like to show off um, the medieval glass fell victim to iconoclast during the Revolution, the dissolution of monasteries, and the Puritan Revolution. Some were saved and reappears in stately homes or related buildings. However, heraldic glass was not so likely to be destroyed as the religious pictorial kind. In fact, the movement against the portrayal of sacred figures tended to boost this period in this production of heraldry. The sad fact is that by far the greatest loss of old glass has been caused by simple neglect or poverty. The leading is rotted or the stonework's crumbled away, allowing the glass to fall out or to be lost. I read somewhere, and I don't know where it was, and I'm going to go back and find the quote, that during this time, Ireland was really, all of the Catholic churches in Ireland were just almost completely destroyed, their windows. And it was like when we'll hit it, when the Gothic revival came back, in Ireland, they literally had to get, no one knew how to do it, to replace them in the churches that they could. So it was a sad time. All right, we're going to jump ahead a little bit. And we're going to talk about my guy, Charles Connick. I know we're skipping over the ages, but in the 19th century, okay. Now remember, we've kind of things until we're talking about the 1800s. So from about the 200 years in there, don't get me wrong, churches were being made, built during that time, and there was stained glass being done, but it was not as prevalent as it was in the earlier times. So we come now to the 19th century, excuse me, and in the 19th century Britain, there was a man called Pugin, Pugin. He was an architect, and he almost singularly established the Gothic style as the only viable ecclesiastical architecture. And he started to build his first church in 1837. And in this church, he also designed stained glass windows for it. So when you go traveling in England, look for his name and look for the things that he designed, because he was a biggie, a real biggie. However, in the United States now around this time, to develop stained glass windows there was an early Gothic renewal revival, and among the Anglican and the Episcopalian congregations. The architecture called for decorative leaded windows to complement their churches. The Gothic was the preferred church style in America from the late 1840s until the war between the states. And our church falls in that period right there. The Cathedral does. The most prominent spokesman for Gothic revival was Charles J. Connick. He lectured widely. He wrote Adventures in Light and Color, the most respected and eloquent publication on the art form in the 20th century. He expressed the opinion that the stained glass first job was to serve the architectural effect. This opinion was in sharp contrast to the painterly effect that had dominated the opalescent era, which we're going to talk about because these eras kind of run together. All right. Where we're coming now, the 19th, 18th, and 19th and 20th, well, 18th and 19th century. Um, the and these are some of his windows. I didn't pull the churches up because we have a wonderful book in the in the bookstore that you might want to take a look at about Connick. We'll talk about that later. As I said, he was the most prominent spokesman for Gothic revival. He lectured widely. He expressed the opinion, as I said, that the stained glass first job was to serve the architectural effect. Okay, not tell a story or anything, but serve the architectural effect. And he was a modern, he medievalist, and he rejected opalescent glass of Tiffany and others. His windows, he was noted for bright blues. That was his big thing, blues. He dealt in that. And he used it partly out of a personal preference and partly because he adhered to a scientific analysis that blue was the active agent in medieval windows. He was committed to a modern vision also of art form, and in his mature works, and these are some that I'm showing you. These are the ones that I'm going to talk about because I'm going to give you a different example. But of the artworks, he was boldly graphic. He was progressive. Um, he especially he was especially concerned to create windows that would resonate to contemporaries, and he introduced American themes, specific American things that he previously had never been represented. He liked literature. Here's Moby Dick on one side, and in chapels too. He also some of the churches, and I did not pull these up, but I am trying to make a bibliography for y'all. When on cold winter nights when you have nothing to do, or you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning like I do and trying to solve the problems of the world. You can click on this bibliography if you're interested in art, and it'll take you to some of the sources that I've used to create this series. And one of the places, St. John Divine's Cathedral and St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, are places that if you go to New York City, try to get to see some of Connick's work. Next master of glass, we come to kind of the Victorian age, 1800s, and what's going on in that age, because Connick's is kind of his designs and Tiffany's, they kind of fall in after after the Civil War and before the Civil War. It was a time of industrial progress and cultural transformation, and the rise of the Gothic revival movement was sought to revive styles and ideas from the Middle Ages, and stained glass became a real integral part of this movement. Now, notice we've had a kind of a graveyard, a death of stained glass, and now with this Gothic revival, it is rising from the ashes again. It was stained glass, the ornate creations transformed ordinary Victorian homes into colorful wonders, where the mundane became magical and the domestic became divine. The opulence and grandeur of these pieces of glass were not simply decorative elements. They were statements of wealth and taste and a desire to showcase their cultural prowess of the owners. Stained glass of every variety was a popular addition to Victorian homes because it was a way to make a house unique and give it a sense of the owner's personality. I never really thought about that and I've toured so many homes, especially in New York and areas, and even in the South that led during this era to stained glass, but I never ever thought of it because I always connect stained glass with religion, and but this was really a way these Victorians were making their homes unique, that they were not just like cookie cutters, row houses and everything. You step into this and you step into opulence. The effect that the leaded glass patterns can have on the observer, such as the combination of designs and providing familiar objects like flowers, animals, and such things can only be fully appreciated when the stained glass is enhanced by natural light. This is because it's backlit. Now, I had to put a couple of women in this because, stained glass, we think of stained glass makers. One of the Victorian, and this is a real interesting gal, if you want to read about her. Margaret Agnes Rope she was a British stained glass artist, and she was in the arts and crafts movement, just like Frank Lloyd Wright on the, across the ocean. Her work is notable for the intensity, and it is intense. Look at this picture. Look at the picture of the prodigal son here. Look at the picture. This is St. John. But all of the elements that I've just discussed about Victorian, Victorian art or Victorian thinking in stained glass are obvious in her productions of these glass. Her glass shows strength of characters. It shows artistry and design and execution of the highest order. Um, and most of her best works is typically strong colors. Look at these strong colors, and how she uses black and colors of black, the deep reds, the gold, the blues, very strong colors. The sense of the individual personality is shown. She was able to capture that in this stained glass window. And now we come to Art Nouveau, then Art Nouveau age. And one of the leading proponents in the Art Nouveau age, and he was a contemporary of Tiffany, and also was Jean Lafarge. Art Nouveau was a style of decoration that began in Europe in the late 1800s. And it first emerged as a real distinct style around 1895. Lafarge's most significant artistic achievement was the development of this opalescence stained glass, which he invented in 1879, and for which he received a League of Honor. It was rapidly imitated, I mean, rapidly imitated by Tiffany, among others, and proved to be America's only original offering for the Art Nouveau area, according to the Decorative Arts Encyclopedia. And let's take a look at that. It was, he was, as you can say, it's colored, but it's different. You don't notice the black as much. It's a blended. If the artists, not only the artists and the poets, this was an age where they were everything medieval. They were reviving and they were going back to. And this artwork is the paintings of this era reflect this. This particular piece reflects the paintings of the era as well. And the glass just shimmered. It had an essence of it that the others did not. The glass that he created, a shimmering and a shining. And then, of course, we couldn't talk about stained glass without talking about this guy. This is Louis Comfort Tiffany, and he took stained glass and the production of stained glass to new heights. He was probably the most famous stained glass artist in the United States, not only for his stained glass windows, which he's famous for, but also for decorative glass objects. So we're going to take a look at, in particularly the Tiffany lamps. And whenever you talk about Tiffany lamps, you think about this particular type of design that's over here on the right. And once again, this is kind of Victorian, a little bit Art Nouveau, because remember when we were talking before in Victorian ages, they like the floral leaves, they like the repetition, they wanted that light to come through. They had the Victorian ladies. Oh my gosh, I was just in New York City and went to see the Agnes Tones, I think it is, who was one of the Tiffany girls. In 2024, Tiffany purchased from the cold magnet, uh, maggot, not maggot. Okay. Anyway, coal lady up in upper state New York. She had beautiful gardens, and she had Tiffany come in and look at her gardens, and she wanted windows to match her gardens up at the head of her stairs, and they were absolutely magnificent. And Agnes Tomes, which is one of the Tiffany girls, designed those. And if you get to New York City, go to the Met, go to the American Wing, and take a look at those windows, because they are absolutely magnificent, which we're going to kind of look at right now. Not the windows, but other things that he did. But take a look at what Tiffany did. He just kind of experimented with glass, and he established a glass making company. And by the 1890s, he was a leading glass producer. And he was experimenting in ways to really color glass differently. Um, and uh, he became, uh, he enjoyed widespread popularity. And then, believe it or not, it was even revived again. His Tiffany glass was revived again in the 90s. This is spring. I believe this is spring. These are his two spring and autumn glasses. The autumn glass, one of his autumn glasses is also at the Met, and it is absolutely magnificent as well. It's huge. But notice the characters, notice the look. Once again, the florals, Victorians and Art Nouveau people love their flowers. We have a lot of repetition going on here. We have a lot of movement. We definitely have dramatic color. Tiffany understood that, and his company and his designers understood how to use that color and how to use it strongly. They also understood line, and they understood contrast. Look at this, the contrast. I love this. Let's talk about contrast here, how to using colors in contrast to create a dramatic effect. They got it. And of course, we couldn't move on without getting an idea. These are some of the Tiffany lamps. I won't dwell on those, but he was he was a leader not only of lamps but of vases, decorative arts. And I think in the history of the previous part one of the series, I had a couple of really good pictures of his decorative arts. Um, we're going to talk a little bit more about Tiffany at the end, so I'll skip that. Now we're coming up to Frank Lloyd Wright. When you think of Frank Lloyd Wright, you don't necessarily think about stained glass windows, but he was a leader in the use of stained glass windows in his home. If you get to go to Chicago, go to, I forget the name of the little community that's outside of Chicago, but you can get to it by the train. And the Frank Lloyd Wright Museum, they will take you on a walking tour of Frank Lloyd Wright houses that are in that era, and nearly every one of them has the use of some kind of window treatment. He recognized this style. He's the use of stained glass windows. He used them to mirror beauty and elegance and spirituality, believe it or not, in his buildings. And several of his structures uh, and that he believed that using natural light and colors would contribute to harmony. You know, the Japanese kind of believe that too. And in the Art Nouveau picked up a lot of the Japanese. Van Gogh understood that. Okay. He understood that Japanese use of light. Um, he used this, he used his stained glass windows to connect the natural. He wanted that natural light to come in of the natural world. He was especially fascinated by how sunlight filtered through the glass. He liked that. He wanted that dance of light and shadow that would come in to his buildings. Um, the One of his most famous buildings is this one, believe it or not. I'm sorry it's blurry, but it gives you an idea of the shape and everything. It was the Darwin Martin House, and it has some of his most adored stained glass windows in it. Um, Perhaps like this one. Look at this. Oh my gosh, this is just awesome. It's an example of his inventive use of stained glass. It features now the tree, and I don't know if this is the tree one or not because I got all my slides kind of mixed up. But anyway, in it is he features the tree of life and created a sense of movement in life. Um, this was, and then we come to my buddy Mark Chagall. And I have not done next year. We will be doing an art at noon, and it'll just be on Chagall because he quirky, odd. Uh, some people didn't like him personally, but a master in creating um, glass. Um, this fella was prominent. He was influential artist in many art forms. Um, his work and his stained glass windows can be found on continents, multiple continents. It's his stained glass is known not only for its incredible beauty. You just can't do justice to this. Trust me, when I walked in to that church and I looked at that window, pictures cannot do justice to Chagall's stained glass. They just don't. They can give you an idea, but the feel and the emotional pull is just phenomenal. He thought intensely about the way light affected his stained glass and how the stained glass changes depending on the angle, the light intensity, and the weather outside. Some reoccurring themes in his work include love and war, religion. These are the Jerusalem windows. Uh, you will see images of musicians and circus people can often be found in his work as well. These are the Jerusalem windows. Oh my gosh, but I love to see those. He painted these 12 stained glass windows, and this is what he said. Now, while I'm saying this, look at that red window. Okay, everybody look at it. I'm going to point to it. It's like I said, what he said about this was that he envisioned them as jewels of translucent fire that belonged to a crown being offered to Esther, the Jewish queen. Wonderful. One of his famous pieces, which one day hopefully we'll do it after Boston, maybe if I'm alive in Chicago. And when we go, we will definitely be going to visit this. This is one of his most famous art stained glass works that is found in the United States. And this was one of the last things he did. This was to the bicentennial, America's commitment to religious freedom. And now, just to end the program, this program is going to go to about 1:15. So if you have to scoot, go on and scoot. And this is a good scooting time. But I cannot end and I cannot stop part two without talking about contemporary artists. And one of them is Wiley. And this is Wiley is the one that was tapped to paint the former President Barack Obama's official portrait. His work reinvents classical Western European religious imagery with new protagonists. Here's your new protagonists, young Black men and women. In Saint Remy, Anthony Sudoku has taken the place of a saint. His Timberland boots, his black leather jacket replacing the monk's robes, and long white beard we might expect to see in a church window. Wiley has said that his stained glass work is not about nationhood. It's not about race. It's about being powerful in the world, glowing literally, letting us see a state of grace for those people who rarely get to be able to be seen that way. If you're unfamiliar with his work, there's a place that you can go locally to see it. And it's over at the Harn Museum in Gainesville. Maybe we'll take an art walk over there. They have a really nice piece of his work over there. Locally. The next contemporary, I would give anything to see this one. This is the windows for the Cathedral of Brasilia, and this was Marianne Peretti. Now, the architect of this building was is often lauded for his work on the cathedral. It's a radically modern house of worship. Google it. Just Google and look at it. It's the Cathedral of Brasilia. Okay. But it's lesser known Franco-Brazilian artist, Peretti, who designed and painted the cathedral's monumental stained glass windows. Peretti drafted the undulating green and the blue shapes. Now, and these flow, y'all, these flow. All look at lines. When we talk about lines here, look at the curve and the use of lines and how she directs the eyes. She did it by hand and to full skill. She worked on enormous sketches she laid across the floor to realize her vision. And today, church visitors enter below ground, venturing through a dark passageway before emerging into the nave where the light filters through her stained glass windows. Wonderful. Another one of my famous, wonderful artists that I love is Judy Chicago. Once again, if you get to New York, go to the Brooklyn Museum of Art, and we're gonna do a whole next year. We're gonna do a whole thing on Judy Chicago and see her dinner plates that she's done. And I'm not even going to tell you more than that. I don't tell you, but it's wonderful. Anyway, this is Judy. This was done in 1992. Okay, and she began to explore her identity as a Jewish woman in the Holocaust Project. And this is called From Darkness to Light. And it's an exhibition she created with her photographer and her and husband, Donald Woodman. Working together, the artists strove to understand their shared Jewish heritage, a background both felt had seldom been addressed in their lives and work. The last piece in the 12-part show, Rainbow Shabbat, portrays, and look at this. I want y'all to look at the faces, look at the lines in this, look at the geometric shapes, just how she just kind of pulls you into this with all of these different colors. In the last 12 piece in part show of the I'm sorry, the last piece in the 12-part show, this Rainbow Shabbat, portrays people of different ages, races, and genders gathering around the Shabbat table. In an exhibition focused on dark It was focused on a dark and just a horrible, horrific subject. It was influenced by the 2.5 months the couple spent traveling between ghettos, concentration camps, and memorials in Europe. And then this was their last piece in this exhibition. She chose to end with an optimistic scene in stained glass. In her words, light is life. Do we not need to flood the airwaves with this today, with this particular painting and this particular subject? And I want you to look, here is the Catholic priest. Notice the ones. Here is the Shabbat table is here, as you can see, with the rabbi holding the dove. The symbolism in here is just, it's one of those, another for me, if I could see this, I know. It was an aha moment when I found it, looking for this. And when I just sat and looked at it one night, I turned the lights off, put this up full screen, and just looked at what she had done in stained glass. We're going to close with this one. So, if you were to go to Venice, and outside of Venice, someone says, I want to take you to a church that Matisse kind of helped design and build. It's outside of Venice. It's the Matisse Chapel, and it's a 15-minute walk from Venice. And it's a walled village with an abundance of cheese and lavender and baguettes, but it is an entirely different way. Just like after I would give anything now after my experience with Chagall and Matisse, uh, in the Union Church. This is my goal. I hope I live to see this one. This is Matisse. It's church. And it's an entirely different way to experience a master's art. Take a look at this. I just want you to, we're going to go through it. Interesting story behind this one. This is the way I wanted to start with the story and end with the story. Okay. So this is an interesting little story. Okay. This chapel itself is a Catholic chapel of the Dominican order, as you see on the left here. And it's still used today by the nuns who have been tasked with its care. Every detail of the chapel was designed by Matisse, from the architecture, the stained glass windows, the murals, and the priest's vestments. These are can you imagine a priest putting these on just for mass? The build took 4 years from start to finish. And though he wasn't particularly religious himself, he obviously paid much attention to each aspect of the space. It's now considered one of the greatest religious sanctuaries of the 20th century. Through the stark white interiors, though have been subject to criticism a lot, as a church, uh, by those who are extremely surprised by his. Let me go back. I'm sorry. They're surprised by his simplicity. It's just simple. The whole project came about. This is the story, okay? The whole project came about after Matisse was diagnosed with cancer. And he was treated and recovered at the age of 72. He advertised he advertised for a young and pretty nurse to look after him during his treatment. And Monique answered the call. They struck up a friendship, and she even ended up posing for some of his paintings. After his recovery, she joined a convent in Venice, and it was here, once Matisse also moved to Venice, that they started to discuss the possibility of this chapel. The chapel, he limited his palette to 3 colors. And I'm going to go back real fast, just pardon me, because I want to go back to the beginning. He limited the chapel to 3 colors, okay? Which creates a calm yet vibrant intensity as light beams through. And you can see that just on the floor, just a little bit. They were and over here, look over here on this right here. Do you see the difference? I just love this. Okay. He said that you just feel an air of effortless reigning from the works. The vestments, as we talked about, and let me flip through these again. The vestments are on display in glass cabinets, and they're colorful and they're bold, and they lack in sign of sombre or priestly blacks or browns. They get pulled out on special occasions to be donned by lucky priests. So, wow, my friends, I've taken you through what, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800 years of masters of art. Now, I wanted you to reflect on this because I'm gonna send this out to you because we don't have, and then at the end, I'm going to go through the questions, but at the end of this, I would like to open it up for discussion. As I go through this, think about some of these elements, okay? Because I'm just going to question you. You don't have to respond. It's not a test. Think about some of these elements because I want you to look at the picture and look at some of the questions, okay? And then I'm going to pull up one cathedral painting, and let's just kind of talk about it based on some of these things that I'm sharing with you right now. First of all, we're going to talk about, in this particular one, look at it, the elements of, so I put my finger, the elements of line. Okay, let's see if I pull it up. What types of lines are they? Um, now let's look at shape. Look at all of the different shapes that are used in this. Once again, these are people designing these that had no clear idea of line, shape, elements of arts. They just knew. Okay. What colors are used in this particular one? What's the hue? Look at the blues particularly, different colors of blues. The use of white, you remember Little Red Riding Hood? Remember the tooth that, remember the picture of the wolf in that we did Molly Bang, and how the use of white? Okay, they got it here, didn't they? All right, let's take a look at the next one. Let's look at shapes in this one. Are they three-dimensional? Do the shapes here, the shapes, and I want you to look at them. We've got, look at all the different things going on in this beautiful rendition. Let's talk about light and dark. Look how the use of light and dark to contrast and give that use of light and dark in this particular one creates contrast. And it also, you're looking at depth in glass, ladies and gentlemen, in glass. Textures. Yes, there are textures there. The road, even on these, I was looking at these last night. You kind of, the stoneware, they're certainly using, and oh, look at the colors, the contrast of colors. Ah, Tiffany, space. How positive and negative space. Symmetrical, asymmetrical, radial, balance. This is a great example of balance, nothing soft-keltered. Why do you think, what portion, ask yourself this question as you're looking at this. What areas of this particular artwork stand out to you and why? Now, how did the Tiffany girls, I'm sure, how did the Tiffany girls draw your attention to those areas? What did they do? Did they use shape? Did they use color? Did they use line? What did they do to pull you in? How do different elements of artwork create essential interest and drama? Look at this piece of work. This is spring, Tiffany's spring. Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. Look at all of the elements they've got going. I mean, all the way around. He has the different designs and elements and the curly cues and the florals. And look at the repetition, because in artwork, that's a big deal. The use of repetition. We've got repetition going around here, repetition with the scroll work, even the beaded repetition. Size, another thing in art. Size and relationships, they're used to create harmony and also maybe tension. This one, definitely harmony, for me. Just looking at it, everything goes together to just make, it's spring, and you can, the flowers all blooming and birds are singing, a harmonious endeavor going on here. Okay, this is in Barcelona, La Sagrada Familia, and the the architect passed away in 1926, but I think it's continually. It's according to his original plans. It's a neo-Gothic structure, and its stained glass windows are a 21st century addition. Okay, so open up the mics. Let's talk about this. Anybody, open up. Tell me what you see. Use the kinds of things that we've talked about. Structure, anything that just hits you at looking at this.
I'm so glad you have Barcelona on here, Sandy. We're going to this.
I know you are. That's the reason I put it on. So hopefully you can
I can
both of you go
ask.
see this and tell us
Oh
what
yeah,
it
we
looks like.
are. We are.
I'm struck by the colors, the color
Yes.
of it. So brilliant.
The colors are positioned so that in the morning, the golds show, and in the afternoon in the west, the blues are obvious, and it becomes evening. And the light really pours into the space, and it makes everything in the space take color. It's completely different from the neo-Gothic and the Gothic that way. It's the whole place becomes a color. And the pillars in the center of the cathedral space are shaped not to be of a classical period, but they're trees holding up the canopy, the ceiling. It's a marvelous space. One of the things that really struck me too about it here in this one compared to some of the other stained glass you showed, Sandy, is that the artist uses the seams to reinforce the story instead of having the feeling of an image that has been interrupted by seams. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I sure do. I sure do.
I see
What do you,
real
what,
sense of
just for
movement.
y'all looking at this, I want you to kind of on this one, focus in on colors just a minute, okay? On this whole picture. What's predominant in the coloring, and why, just in the back of your mind, what does that do to the effect or affect? Yeah, how does it affect you? What
It's
colors
more
are
peaceful
predominant
to
in this
have one
picture?
color, one sort of piece of the palette at a time. It's peaceful.
He's got oranges, he has blues, he has greens. What does that, and how do you think, well, I don't know. When I looked at this, I thought, and he'll pick up. Now, if you notice, they pick up the greens, some of the greens over here, pick up some of the blues over here. There is no orange, I don't think, here. And I don't believe on this one over here, there's any blue. But this one in the center, there's a combination of all three colors. I just wonder what the thinking was as the infusion of light, how that would affect, you know. And they're not, would you consider them cold colors, warm colors?
Both. For me, they're both, because the blues are the cold and the yellows and reds are warm. And the green and the blue are cool.
Now, once you kind of look, you can kind of see the light reflecting down this side. Okay, take a look there. Then you can go over here and you can see the light along here. Okay, I wish we could see in front. We can't. Any other comments about how it makes you feel, or of some? Yeah, Catherine.
To me, all the lines convey movement and energy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's what lines do in art.
Mhm.
They either just stop you straight on, or when you use the curved line, you get that, get the motion and the movement feeling. So this is a real interesting use of line, because you've got the curved shapes, okay, and you've got your straight line shapes. But also look here, what they were doing. They're complementing what frames them. Look at that. I mean, it's just, it just, even though it is contemporary as all get out, as Middle Ages at all get out, it looks like it's supposed to be there to me.
Mhm.
Those windows are not jutting. They look like they're supposed to be. All right. I know. Where's the stained glass, Sandra? I have to leave with this. This pulls it all into what we're all about. This is a wonderful quote. And if you will go for quotes for stained glass windows, and if you Google it, I guarantee you this quote comes up 5 gazillion times. And it's by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And she
Mm.
says, people are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out. But when the darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed only if there is light from within. Why do y'all think I chose this to close with? Let me give you the background. This is Caiaphas. Of course, this is Christ. He has been brought for questioning. It's a serious affair. Notice the light. Where's the light?
Jesus.
That's what the light is here. It's here, and it's here. And notice where Christ's eyes is going.
Mhm.
But yet, to me, when I look at this, the light is not here. This is not what's illuminating. It's from him.
Mhm.
It's from him. As he faces the most horrible, horrible time, the questioning, and he knows what's coming. He understands it. He gets it. But yet his light shines forth for all of these guys in the darkness. And my friends, when we sit in that stained glass, wonderful, wonderful cathedral Sunday morning, and that light comes beaming through, let it pass right through inside us and pass right out. That's what those guys wanted it to do. Amen and amen.
Yeah.
All right.
Sandy,
One other thing. Yes.
Sandy, what was that last piece? The name of that last piece?
It is. Hang on a minute. It's by gosh. It's Jesus and the High Priest. It's by Storm, I think. Let me send that to you, because I wrote it
Okay.
down and I can't.
Okay.
But I'll send it to you. But
Thank you.
it's marvelous.
Yeah.
We will be looking at this marvelous thing. Those of you that care to join us in May, we're going to do a trip to
I think it's April.
Winter
Sandy.
Park, to the
April.
Marsh Museum.
April 24th.
Okay, April the 24th. I don't know whether this will come or not, but this is the Morse Museum, and the Morse Museum houses probably one of the largest examples of, it's a great, I won't go into it. It's a great story how they acquired all of that. But one of the things that they have that is just great is at the I think it was 1893 fair, or maybe it was 1923. I don't know, one of the threes. Tiffany displayed a interior for a church, and they have that, and it's magnificent. So the other thing that I want to share with you, because I can't, this thing weighs about 85 pounds, but this is the book called Charles J. Connick, America's Visionary Stained Glass Artist. It is a wonderful book, and it really is. Let's see if I can get out of this and get back to it. Maybe not. I think mine's not letting me. Okay. Okay, let me see one more. He was just the flag bearer for stained glass windows, and his beautiful, beautiful windows are in churches across America. In fact, I looked at one that's in Portland, Oregon, and one that is in San Francisco that is just out absolutely dynamite. So I've kept you a long time, but I didn't know how to break it down to under an hour and a half. It's just too much stuff. Next, part 3 is going to be a look and give you a background, a little bit of background about our stained glass windows in our beautiful cathedral, the Tudor Gothic windows. And then our own dear sweet Kate, we're trying to get a time together, will lead us on her thoughts and her impressions of those stained glass windows. And we'll do an art walk with that. And that's coming up. So in April, we'll do that. And then in May, we will be art walking. We'll be doing a lot of art walking in May. I know this is long, but I hope you have a feel now for, 500 or 600 years of stained glass and appreciate it as much as I do. A little bit.
Thank you, Sandy. I'm gonna go ahead and
Great job. Thank you,
stop
Sandy.
the recording.